Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 39, a logistics manager out of Dallas, and I watched my wife walk down the jet bridge like she was leaving a meeting early. She tossed the line over her shoulder without slowing. No contact while I'm gone. Deal with it. Then the smirk, small, practiced, a punctuation mark on a decision she'd made long before she said it. I didn't argue. I just stood there with my hands in my pockets, feeling the air change around me the way it does when a storm moves off and leaves the sky too quiet. That silence I agreed to? It turned out to be the sharpest answer I ever gave her. On the drive home, I kept replaying the scene. Not the words. I'd heard those in different costumes for months, but the rhythm, the clipped sentences. The way she avoided my eyes like contact might rewrite her script. She wanted a reaction, something loud enough to justify whatever came next. Instead, she got a nod in the back of my head as I turned toward the exit signs. I felt oddly steady. Stunned, sure, but steady in the way a man feels when he finally sees the shape of a thing he's been pretending not to notice. The house was too neat when I got back. Her suitcase had been packed for days, but she'd left her travel mug in the sink like a placeholder. I rinsed it, set it upside down on the rack, and stood there listening to the drip. That's when it hit me. The peace didn't feel like absence. I was being freed from the daily guessing game. What mood? Which rule today? What moving target would turn a normal sentence into a test? I took a slow lap through the rooms, checked windows, set the alarm, and went out to the patio just to breathe like a person who lives in his own house. We hadn't always been like this. Early on, we were simple. Two people with normal schedules and a calendar we both respected. Lately, everything had a headline. I need to find myself. I can't breathe. You're too comfortable. She said I was predictable, like that was a sin. I work freight and routing. Predictability keeps trucks on time and invoices paid. It also keeps rent covered and lights on. Somewhere in the last year, competence turned into a personality flaw she needed to outgrow. She wanted no contact. I honored it to the letter. I put my phone on the counter and let it sit there like a witness. When I finally picked it back up, it was to mute the thread where she and I used to share routine updates about groceries and errands. Felt strange at first, like walking past a door I used to open without thinking, but the stillness behind it told me I was moving in the right direction. By morning, the new routine had already found me. Coffee, emails, dispatch checks, a meeting about a client's late fees. I lost myself in work like I always do. Except this time, there wasn't a second screen running in the back of my head, tracking her mood swings in real time. At lunch, curiosity tugged. I opened her public profile. Sunlit photo. Straw hat. Hotel pool in the background. The caption said, "Finally breathing." Underneath, a scatter of heart emojis and "You go girl" comments from people who never met a mortgage payment with their own money. I didn't comment. I set the phone face down and finished my sandwich. The next 2 days kept their shape. I did my job, hit the gym on the way home, cooked simple meals, slept fine for the first time in months. Little things shifted. I put my passport in the safe. I pulled a box from the closet and labeled it with her name. Not a threat, just organization, the same way I'd sort returns at the warehouse. I updated a few account passwords I should have changed a long time ago. None of it looked like revenge. It looked like a man remembering he owns his own life. Her posts kept pace with the trip, a drink balanced on a balcony rail, a sunrise captioned with something about energy and alignment, a group photo where she leaned into a stranger like they'd been laughing all morning. Each time, my phone stayed on the table. I noticed a pattern I'd missed while I was busy trying to keep us steady. She wanted leverage. No contact was about controlling the narrative without the inconvenience of witnesses. Friends noticed she was gone and asked soft questions. I told the truth without the details. She needed a trip, I said. She asked for no contact. Nobody likes the sound of those words coming from a husband's mouth. People fidget. They look for a way to fix it with advice. I kept my tone even and ended those conversations quickly. At night, the house made familiar sounds. The AC clicking on. A distant neighbor's dog tripping the motion light. I read for an hour without checking the door every few minutes like I'd been doing for a year, waiting for the front hall tone of her key and whatever version of her came with it. I didn't pour whiskey or call an old friend to rehash the play-by-play. I sat with the quiet and realized I wasn't afraid of it. That was new. By midweek, she'd settled into a rhythm online. The captions got braver. Choosing myself, unlearning limitations, returning to my truth. I recognized the phrases, they weren't hers. They belonged to a book, a podcast, a friend with a divorce still wet on the ink. It read like a script. I scrolled, not to torment myself, but to confirm what my gut already knew. When someone starts narrating their life as an influencer might, the audience isn't you anymore. You're a prop or a foil or a lesson. Either way, you're not a partner. I started noticing small, practical things. The garage felt bigger without her car. The laundry basket filled at a human pace. The dinner dishes were mine, which meant they were done. I made a list for the weekend. Oil change, trim the shrubs, clear the gutters before the first fall rain. That last item pricked a memory. Last year on the ladder, her laughing about how I took suburb life too seriously. I'd laughed, too, and kept clearing leaves because roofs don't care about your vibe. They leak when you ignore them. So do marriages. On the third night, I took a longer route home just to drive past White Rock Lake. Windows down, air warm but soft. The sun was folding into the water and the runners were out in pairs. I felt something simpler, like someone had turned down a noise I didn't realize had been blaring. I thought about the gate again, about the way she said deal with it, like a dare. I realized I already had. Not with a speech, but with a decision, small and steel, that I wasn't going to chase a person who needed me to beg so she could feel valuable. That night, I set my phone on Do Not Disturb and placed it face up this time. If she called, the log would show it. If she didn't, the log would show that, too. I locked the front door, checked the back, and stood in the hallway a moment longer than usual. The house felt honest. Every sound belonged to something real. A settling board, the cycle of the dishwasher, the timer on the thermostat. There was no second guessing about what any of it meant. It meant I lived here, and I was doing what needed doing. Before I went to bed, I opened a fresh page in a notebook and wrote one sentence in the middle of it. Respect is quiet. I wrote it to remind myself that I didn't have to perform to prove I mattered. I turned off the light. The room went dark without feeling empty. Somewhere over state lines, a plane charted its arc toward wherever she needed to pose next. I slept, because I finally did, about the man who would be standing here when the plane came back. The first 2 days were easy to read. Morning sunrises, poolside angles, a glass of something bright held against sky. Captions like, finally breathing, and relearning myself, stacked under hashtags that looked copied out of a workbook. The comments told the rest of the story. Men with gym selfies for profile pictures dropped fire emojis. Women who collect affirmations like seashells typed, "Yas queen." I kept my promise and said nothing. No contact means no contact. Silence felt like a straight spine. I went to work, closed out 2 difficult shipments, answered my crew's questions, and signed off on a repair order that's been hanging around too long. At lunch, I ate in the break room instead of my truck, phone face down beside the coffee machine, letting it buzz without rewarding it. By the third day, the captions sharpened. Choosing my truth. No one owes anyone their old version. You learn to hear when words aren't native to a person. They land as slogans, not sentences. That's how I knew the moment was coming. The one that strips the pretense off the script. I wasn't hunting for it. It found me at 7:42 p.m., blue light on the kitchen counter, my palms still damp from rinsing a cutting board. A new post slid to the top of her feed. It wasn't coy or coyly deniable. It was clear. Her mouth on a man's mouth, both eyes closed, his hand in the small of her back. A hotel pool blurring in the background like a commercial. Her straw hat tipped back. Her left shoulder turned to the camera, the bottle of something expensive implied by the angle. I didn't blink. My thumb hit the buttons without thinking. Lock and volume up, the little white flash, the thumbnail in the lower left corner proving I had it. I checked the time and wrote it down on the notepad I keep beside the stove, 7:42. At 7:43, the post vanished. Refresh once, gone. Refresh twice, still gone. The grid healed over like a lake after a stone. I looked back at the notepad. One line. One timestamp. No commentary. The house was so quiet I could hear the fan over the stove humming its steady rectangle of sound. 5 minutes later, the phone lit up with her name. I watched it ring once, twice, 3 times, and answered on the 4th, just so there'd be no mistake that I wasn't ducking her. Her voice was bright and casual, the kind of tone people use when they're fishing while pretending to swim. Hey, just checking in. What are you up to? I kept my voice level. Yes, I saw it. Have a nice vacation. Then I ended the call. Just a clean cut. The silence after a truth lands has a weight to it. I set the phone down and finished what I was doing. Chicken on the sheet pan, broccoli tossed with oil and salt, timer set for 22 minutes. Somewhere else a woman stared at her screen, cataloging the last 60 seconds of her life and trying to write them into a softer shape. Somewhere else a man, hat on backward, good teeth, rented confidence, checked a mirror. Her stories hiccuped to life 10 minutes later. White text on a black background. Not everything is what it seems. Then another. Context matters. People jump to conclusions. Then, because the show must go on, a boomerang of a clinked glass and a caption about gorgeous nights. The defensive pivot told me more than the kiss. She wasn't sorry. She was worried about optics. I didn't answer the follow-up text that landed after the stories. Can we talk? She wrote, as if the phrase, no contact while I'm gone, belonged to someone else. Honor is inconvenient by design. That's why it means something. I left the message on read without opening it. Let the preview sit there like a little framed proof. I don't go looking for fights. I just refuse to move my feet when someone tries to push me off my spot. Somewhere in the middle of dishes and a game on low volume, I did two quiet things. First, I backed up the screenshot to my cloud and a thumb drive I keep in a cigar tin in the garage. Not for social media. The word revenge cheapens clarity. For record, I labeled the file with the date and timestamp and nothing else. Second, I took a clean page in my notebook and drew 3 columns. Time, action, my response. I wrote 2 entries and closed the book. A man who works in logistics knows this. If you don't document the load, somebody will insist it never existed. Her posting slowed over the next 24 hours. When she did surface, the captions bent toward the audience she wanted to keep. Growth is messy. Boundaries don't make you unkind. The comments adapted on cue. A few people asked if everything was okay. She replied with a heart and a sparkle and a line about doing the work. In my world, doing the work means showing your math. Her math kept changing. The pressure showed up in other places. A mutual friend texted me out of nowhere. How are you holding up? I asked what he meant, knowing, and he did a clumsy dance about seeing some posts and hoping we were good. I told him the only truth I owed anyone who wasn't in my house. She asked for no contact. I'm respecting that. He said he admired my maturity. She tried another call the next afternoon, the kind people label accidental if you pick up. I let it roll to voicemail. There was no message. A minute later came a text. Just wanted to hear your voice. The theater of it would have been funny if a marriage weren't involved. I put the phone down and walked out to the driveway to rinse dust off the truck. Water beads on a clean hood behave themselves. You see what you're dealing with. By evening, she posted a photo dump. 10 squares of sunsets, cocktails, a beach towel, strangers' elbows. The kiss didn't make the cut, of course. You could feel the effort in the curation. An honest life doesn't need that much editing. I scrolled once, deleted the app from my home screen. Not my account, just the shortcut, and went to fold laundry. A man can choose what lives one tap away. The day after that, there was a gap. No posts or stories. One text at 9:13 p.m. Hope you're okay. I watched the 3 dots appear and disappear and didn't reward them. The notebook got 1 new line. Action, check-in text, after deletion event. My response, none. People mistake restraint for weakness when they've only ever known responses that burn the room down. Restraint is choosing not to light the match you're holding. I slept better that night than any night that month. Morning brought its useful rituals, coffee, emails, a quick fix on a misrouted palette. I didn't know what she would post next, or who would clap, or how she'd spin the hole in her narrative where the kiss used to be. Didn't matter. I had the moment that mattered in the only form that doesn't erase itself. Saved, timestamped, backed up twice, written down in ink. The pressure wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the person who'd confused attention for oxygen and control for respect. She wanted a silent husband so she could narrate herself without interruption. She got one. And with every hour I honored her rule, the rule stopped belonging to her and started belonging to me. I rinsed my coffee mug, set it upside down on the rack, and listened to the same drip as the first night. Somewhere over a blue pool, a woman pretended context could change a kiss. Somewhere between 2 filters, a caption tried to make a choice look like growth. My phone stayed face up and quiet on the counter. The timer on the oven ticked. The house held its shape. The pressure built in exactly the direction it needed to go. There's a way freight moves when you stop pushing and just route it correctly. Less noise, more inevitability. That's what the next 24 hours felt like. I opened the notebook where I'd written the time stamp and turned the page. At the top, I printed a title like a bill of lading. Actions TO complete. I wrote the first line in block letters, document, then slid the thumb drive from the cigar tin into my laptop and copied the screenshot again. One copy to the drive, one to the cloud, one to a fresh email addressed to myself with the subject line 742, no commentary. Attachments don't argue. Under document, I wrote contacts. People who would need clarity. Her sister Emily first. Her mother second. I composed the message in tight, neutral language. Emily, you will be meeting her flight on Friday at 3:10 p.m., Gate C17, Baggage Carousel 6. She asked me for no contact. I'm honoring that. Attaching an image that explains why I won't be there. Daniel. I attached the screenshot and hit send. Same message to her mother, minus any invitation to interpret it for me. Then one to myself with the itinerary details copied from the booking email she'd forwarded months ago when we were still a team scheduling rides and meals. Gate, time, carousel. I printed the itinerary and the image on regular paper, not glossy, because fax don't need special lighting. I slid both sheets into a manila folder and labeled it Arrival. Under Contacts, I wrote Financial. That column was easy. Remove Authorized User. Freeze the joint card. Redirect direct deposit to my personal account. I called the bank and explained there was a separation in progress. I didn't use the word emergency. I used the word boundaries. Representatives understand that word because their systems are built on them. 10 minutes later, my account alerts matched the reality I was living. Under Financial, I wrote Legal. I booked an initial consult with a family law attorney a friend had recommended months ago when I'd foolishly joked about needing a prenuptial mid-marriage. Friday morning, 8 a.m., before her plane hit the ground. I created a folder with the title Counsel and slid in copies, marriage certificate, mortgage, the printout of her original text, no contact while I'm gone, my notes, and the time-stamped screenshot. If I had to tell the story to a stranger across a table, I wanted the stranger to spend more time reading than listening. Under Legal, I wrote Home. I scheduled a locksmith for the afternoon on standby, pending how the day unfolded. I pulled one roller suitcase from the top shelf of the closet, the one she uses whenever the trip is more performance than travel, and packed what a person needs to be out of a house without needing to come back for basics. A week of clothes, toiletries, the extra charger, a jacket in case the weather changed its mind. I folded and zipped and stood the bag by the door like a simple, practical sentence waiting for a period. The last column I wrote in the notebook was communication. I underlined it twice because it mattered most. No contact does not mean mute forever. It means the message carries in a different way. I was going to put the truth in the hands of people whose opinions had once mattered to her and let the truth do its work in daylight. Public exposure isn't a crowd. It's a community. There's a difference. Morning came clean. At 8 sharp, I sat across from the attorney and laid out the folder. He scanned in silence the way I like to see someone work, eyes moving, pen occasionally tapping, no performative sighs. You've already done 90% of what I would tell a client to do, he said finally. Keep honoring no contact. Don't answer provocations. We'll file for separation of finances immediately. We'll document delivery of her bag if that happens. I nodded. I needed a process I could execute. At noon, Emily texted. I got your email. Disappointed, but thank you for telling me before I heard it from someone else. I'll be there. I took an early night. The house felt like a stage being set without actors. I put the manila folder marked Arrival on the console by the front door and placed a sticky note next to it with 3 instructions for Emily. Meet at exit. Do not escalate. Hand her the printout only after you say hello. It wasn't about controlling Emily. It was about protecting her from the shock of her sister's performance flailing in public. Friday morning, I cleaned the kitchen like a man expecting company even though I'd have none. I worked a half day, signed off at noon, and turned my phone volume down but not off. If the day went as designed, the first wave would hit around 3:20. I set a glass of water on the counter and stood by the window watching the tree line in the yard barely move. I felt nothing dramatic. Just the steady hum of a system fed the right inputs. At 3:28 p.m., my phone buzzed. Emily. She walked off with that little smile. Emily said, breath still high from weaving through people. Looked around like she was expecting you with flowers. I said her name. She turned, saw me, saw Mom, and the smile slipped. I hugged her. She was stiff. Then I handed her the paper. I said nothing. Emily kept going. She stared at it for a long time like if she didn't blink it would change. Then she said, "This is taken out of context." Mom said, "It's your face, sweetheart." She got loud for a second, then looked around and remembered she was in the middle of baggage claim with families everywhere. She tried to laugh. It sounded wrong. I pictured the exact color of the floor tile by Carousel 6. I pictured the sign about oversized items, the bored kid with a balloon, the woman wrestling a stroller. Normal life holding steady while someone's curated story lost its glue. She asked where you were. Emily said, voice lower now. I told her, he honored your rule. She went quiet. Then she asked for a ride home. A pause. We told her we'd give her a ride, not a cover. Thank you, I said. 2 words. The only ones that fit. After we hung up, I stood with my palms on the counter and let the report settle in my body. A confirmation that the plan had met the ground without skidding. I had the truth, witnessed, and spoken back to me by someone who'd loved her long before I ever knew her name. My phone buzzed again. A text this time. We need to talk. Then another. You had no right. Then, like an actor missing her line. Please pick up. I looked at the screen until the bubble stopped and set the phone down exactly where it had been all week. I wasn't going to break my word just because hers broke first. I rolled the suitcase a half-foot closer to the door and checked the time. Locksmith in 40 minutes, per the window I'd set. The afternoon light slid across the floorboards toward the threshold, as if even the sun understood that entry and exit are their own kinds of language. There would be noise soon, calls, explanations shaped like questions, logistics that feel like feelings because people don't like to say the plain thing. I didn't have to say anything. The story was already out where it belonged. In the open, with her people, in a place where a smirk can't hold its shape. I rinsed a glass and left it to dry on the rack, then opened the notebook and drew a clean line beneath the last entry. New line, new ink, 1528, public exposure confirmed, secondhand report. My response, none. There's a relief that lives on the far side of not performing. It's quiet and heavy and honest. I let it sit, then closed the book, turned the bolt on the front door just to feel it move, and waited for the next knock I already knew I wouldn't answer. Emily's call ended, and the house went back to its steady hum. I wrote one more line in the notebook, 3:28 p.m., report received, and slid the pen into the spiral. The locksmith texted that he was 5 minutes out. When he arrived, I held the door while he swapped the deadbolt and rekeyed the back slider. We didn't make small talk. He handed me the new keys, I paid, and he left. Metal clicked into metal with that clean, final sound you only appreciate when you've spent months living with doors that felt symbolic. I rolled her suitcase onto the porch. Not thrown, standing upright beside the mat. I'd packed it the way any decent person would for a week away from home. Shoes, toiletries, chargers, a sweater. On the door, inside a clear sleeve to keep the afternoon heat from curling paper, I taped 2 pages. Top page, a printed screenshot of her, no contact while I'm gone. Deal with it. Message, date and time clear as a runway number. Under that, the kiss photo, time-stamped, uncropped, exactly as my phone saw it. I added one line on a yellow note between them. I honored your rule. Honor mine. Her texts started hitting in batches, old tactic dressed as urgency. We need to talk. Then, I can explain. Then, why would you involve my family? The tone changed by the minute. Cajoling, indignant, confessional, transactional. I didn't open any of them. The previews were enough to catalog the pattern. I set the phone face up on the kitchen counter and let it vibrate against wood like a distant tool. A man doesn't have to pick up every ringing thing to prove he's alive. Emily texted once more, dropping her at your place now. We're not staying. Do what you need to do. I answered with 2 words I meant. Thank you. Through the blinds, I saw their car glide to the curb and idle. She got out first, chin lifted, the choreography of indignation already moving through her shoulders. Emily stayed behind the wheel, sunglasses on, Mouth a straight line that said she wasn't a prop today. Their mother didn't look up. She stared at her hands like a person who just realized the weight she'd been carrying wasn't what she thought. My wife took 3 quick steps up, then stopped when she saw the suitcase. Stopped again when she saw the clear sleeve. The smirk tried to climb back into place and failed. She pulled the top page out and read her own sentence. No contact while I'm gone. Deal with it. You could see the recognition hit, the way a person looks when they meet their own words in the wild. She flipped to the second page and froze. Even from behind the glass, I could make out the small, involuntary tilt of her head people do when a picture refuses to turn into the story they need. The handle rattled. Of course it did. Habit is stubborn. The new lock held. She pressed the bell with the edge of her thumbnail and waited. I didn't move. The bell's tone faded, and the porch took its breath again. She knocked then, 3 quick, angry taps, the kind that dare a door to pick sides. Silence stayed on my side. After a beat, she put her mouth close to the door seam and tried what used to work. Soft voice, half laugh, shared history as a crowbar. Daniel, can we be adults? This is childish. Her voice shaped itself to a dozen old arguments, each designed to get me to give her something. Attention, explanation, a mistake to point at. The house offered her drywall and air. She tried to call next. The phone lit my counter, her name bright as a flare. I watched it count to the 4th ring and then to voicemail. No message. A minute later, another call. Then a text that asked me if I was really going to humiliate her like this. That's what exposure feels like to a person who built their identity on applause. Gravity feels like an insult. From the car, Emily didn't intervene. Later she'd tell me she kept her hands on the wheel and her eyes forward because this wasn't hers to fix. She'd say she watched her sister cycle through the set list. Anger, dismissal, fainting vulnerability, sudden tears, and thought about the picture under the first page. She'd say the tears landed on her like rain that already decided to fall somewhere else. I walked to the sink and ran water over a plate, because doing a small, honest thing keeps your head from wandering into scenes that don't require your presence. Outside, the performance slid into its next act. She turned from the door and marched to Emily's window, said something with sharp hands. Emily didn't look over. The passenger side door cracked open 2 inches and closed again. A boundary you could measure with your thumb. 5 minutes later, the script changed to logistics. She called the man from the photo. I couldn't hear her side, but I could read the posture. First the tilt of command, then the listening that doesn't blink, then the wave of a hand that tries to swat reality into compliance. 2 more calls. A text sent, deleted, rewritten, sent again. The answer she wanted didn't arrive. Men who pose for pictures like that are great at lighting. They're terrible at weather. She returned to the door and tried soft again. Danny, please. People are watching. People were, but not the ones she meant. Mrs. Gomez from 2 houses down paused on her evening walk and decided to study a patch of bougainvillea that didn't need studying. Ken across the street pretended to adjust a sprinkler head for a very long time. Nobody took out a phone. Nobody said anything. Public exposure isn't a mob. It's a neighborhood witnessing a story return to scale. The next move was predictable, the long paragraph text. I made a mistake, but you made it worse by embarrassing me. You could have talked to me privately. You know I've been unhappy. You know I needed space. In another life, I might have answered line by line, correcting nouns until we both starved. Instead, I wrote 1 short message on paper and slid it under the seam of the door. Per your request, no contact while you were gone. Per mine, no entry today. Your bag is outside. Ink does something pixels can't. It sits there with you, not caring how many times you try to swipe it away. She called her mother then. Through the window, I saw the older woman lift her phone and lower it without unlocking the screen. That was the only mercy I wanted for any of them, an end to the endless commentary loop. Emily finally got out, walked up 2 steps, and said 1 sentence I could almost hear through the door. We'll take you to a hotel. My phone buzzed once more with a number I didn't recognize. The caller left a voicemail. Later, I listened. It was her friend, the one with the quotes and the wine. She said she didn't agree with how my wife had handled things and that, for what it's worth, she respected the way I did. When the car finally pulled away, the porch felt larger. I opened the door and took the papers down. The tape left a faint outline that would wash off with a damp cloth. I set the pages on the console and wrote another line in the notebook. 5:12 p.m. bag retrieved. No entry, calls unanswered, boundary communicated in writing. Then I made dinner like a person who does dinner. The pan heated. Oil shimmered. The first sizzle of onions said the only thing I needed to hear. The house works when you do. That night, she posted a black square with white text about moving through grief and people weaponizing pain. Comments bloomed with sympathy from strangers who only know how to pick a team. Emily texted privately. She's at a courtyard by the airport. The guy isn't picking up. Mom's going home. I'm done covering. Sleep. I sent back a single check mark emoji I use like a period. We understood each other without the litter of 1,000 words. The phone went quiet near midnight. Boundaries eventually exhaust even the most persistent hands. I set the device on the dresser, face down this time, because nothing on it required my attention before morning. The locks were changed. The door was shut. The suitcase had completed its small, necessary journey to a patch of concrete not owned by a story anymore. People think silence is cruel because it doesn't give them something to push against. Truth is, silence is air after the fire. It keeps what's solid from turning into smoke. She tried guilt, seduction, blame, panic. The sequence is old, the rhythm reliable. And for once, it didn't land. Not on me or her family. Consequences aren't a punishment you hand someone. They're a room you stop heating. Before bed, I walked one last lap. Front door, back slider, garage, touching each lock with a fingertip like a checklist. The house held. The night held. Somewhere, a hotel ice machine dumped a fresh load into an empty bin while a woman scrolled through her own reflection on a dark phone. The likes ticking down, the calls unanswered, the plan out of hands. Morning came with the kind of quiet that doesn't test you. Coffee, pan on low for eggs. The click of the new deadbolt when I opened the door just to feel it work. No messages overnight. The porch was clear, the walkway swept, the bag gone. I wrote one line in the notebook, 6:42, house secured, and closed it on my palm like a stamp. I kept my appointment with the attorney, this time without the ache behind my eyes. Paperwork moved like freight when the route is already drawn. Petition to separate finances, notice to communicate through counsel only, draft agreement about personal property. He asked if I wanted to push for anything punitive. I told him I wanted clean edges, not a bonfire. He nodded, marked a few boxes, and slid the papers across for signatures. Back home, I finished the list I'd started the week she left, but hadn't let myself complete. Updated HR forms with my brother as emergency contact, changed beneficiaries, removed her from the gym membership she never used but liked to mention when she wanted to say we were trying. I boxed the last of her things with the same care I'd use for a client's shipment. Folded, labeled, taped. A courier picked the boxes up at noon with a receipt that didn't need adjectives. The house exhaled into its new shape. She tried one more angle that afternoon, an email this time, longer than necessary. You've made your point. Let's be adults. We can fix this if you meet me halfway. I forwarded it to counsel and added 3 words. Please respond formally. That was the only reply she got from me. News traveled the natural routes. A neighbor waved from his driveway longer than usual and didn't ask anything. A mutual friend sent a 2-sentence note that read like caution and respect stitched together. Emily called once to check on me and ended up talking about her mother's rose bushes the rest of the time. We didn't say her sister's name. Work stayed steady. I took an early shift all week and left the warehouse clean each day. Docks swept, manifests closed, radios on chargers. I ate what I cooked. I slept. Small maintenance tasks took on the satisfaction of honest math. Mow the lawn, replace the AC filter, tighten the loose hinge on the pantry door. I bought a heavy diner mug from a hardware store because its weight felt like an answer. The old playlist I used to reach for when I wanted noise stayed where it was. She posted through it, of course. Vague quotes about growth, a photo of a hotel breakfast with a book face down beside a plate. Comments split into the familiar lines. People who only know us as captions picking sides like they're ordering lunch. I didn't look often. When I did, it was to make sure I wasn't imagining it. The way an audience thins when a show refuses to admit the plot. The man from the pool disappeared from her squares, and, from what Emily said, from her nights. That was always coming. Men who need an audience aren't built for scenes without applause. One afternoon, I drove out to White Rock and walked the loop without counting miles, letting the lake reflect whatever it wanted. A kid on a bike passed me with tassels flaring. A couple argued gently about whether the clouds looked like dogs or ships. A heron stalked the shallows like a shoplifter. If you pay attention to a place for long enough, it teaches you scale. My drama was a drop. My decisions were the shoreline. I adjusted rooms the way a person moves inventory to match demand. The guest room became a clean office, desk empty except for a lamp, a stapler, and the notebook. I mounted shelving in the garage and unburied the tools I always had but rarely used because I'd learned to make myself small in my own house. I replaced a dim bulb in the hallway and laughed once, out loud, when it snapped into brightness I didn't know I was missing. It's amazing how many things you forget you can reach. Her last attempt came on a Tuesday at 9:47 p.m. A text, then 3 dots, then another. I'm outside. Can we talk? I looked at the front camera and saw the shape of a person I had loved standing on concrete like it owed her. Not broken, just unwilling to accept the math. I set the phone down. After a minute she rang the bell, then rang again. I let the chime finish each time, then fade. Eventually the bell stopped. The porch returned to being a porch. Next morning I found an envelope slid under the door. Inside, the ring. Just metal catching the light. I placed it in a small dish on the console, next to the key I'd stopped carrying. I filed the petition the following day. The clerk stamped the papers. The attorney confirmed service, and the process became what it should have always been. Paperwork about a situation already decided. People like to say there are no winners in divorce. They're right in the way weather is right. But there are things better than winning. Things like refusing to lose yourself, like finishing something without breaking what you need for what comes next. Evenings found a cadence. Gym at 6, shower, skillet dinner, book for an hour, walk. I stopped scrolling before bed and started sleeping like a man who believes his locks. I booked a weekend to see my brother and fish a river we used to swear we'd come back to when life slowed down. Life doesn't slow. You slow it. You choose. If there's irony, it's simple. She told me, no contact while I'm gone, and thought silence would starve me into chasing. Instead, it fed something I had ignored. The part of me that knows how to be alone without shrinking. The part that doesn't barter with reality just to keep a seat at a table that keeps getting pulled away. A month later, Emily texted 2 words. She's moving. Another city, another feed, a new set of phrases to try on. I stared at the message until the meaning settled into bone, then typed back a single dot and sent it like a period at the end of a chapter. I made one last entry in the notebook that night. Closed. Respect maintained. No flourish. I set the notebook on the shelf above the desk and went to the kitchen. The new mug sat where I left it, heavy and honest. Outside, the motion light caught a moth and let it go. I locked the door and turned out the lamp and let the house be a house. She wanted no contact. I gave it to her, not as punishment, as a boundary that marks where I end and where anything worth holding begins.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.